Hey everyone, and welcome to the Shared Cup podcast. This is episode 5. Today, my guest, Sara Vogel, is going to share her very personal story of how loss and becoming a single mom of 3 young kids at the age of 30 helped grow and deepen her relationship with God, and how her upbringing played such an important role in that journey. I'm Alison Liddic, and this podcast is for women who want to experience the overflowing love of God through our own stories. We pray that you are blessed by this message. Hello, and welcome to the Shared Cup podcast. I am your host, Alison Liddic, and I have Sara Vogel with me today as my guest. Welcome, Sara.
Thank you.
Thanks for being here.
Thanks for having me.
Absolutely. So I know you have many stories that you would like to share with us, but we have chosen one for today.
Yes.
But I'm really excited for you to share this because I really do feel that it is going to bring hope and encouragement to so many people. So thank you for stepping out and sharing your story with us today.
Thank you. I hope so.
Yes, it will for sure. So why don't we start with just getting to know you a little bit, who you are, what you do, maybe what you do for fun or whatever else you want to share with us.
So I'm an analyst. I work for PNC. Lucky to be working at home right now, but I'm a mom of 3 with 2 stepchildren and 3 bonus children. So,
oh, wow.
It's a full house. Yeah.
Yeah.
But live in Springboro and been here for the past probably like 6-7 years. So yeah.
All right. So you are busy now. Do you have all the kids with you during quarantine?
So no,
Okay.
My 3 are with me all the time.
Okay.
My husband's 2 alternate. And then I have 1 older daughter who's home from college right now. So she's here. The other 2 live elsewhere. They're older too. So it's crazy.
Yes, that is. Well, nice to meet you. And thank you again for joining us. So I feel like the best place to start stories is at the beginning. So why don't you take us back a little bit in your story, wherever you feel is an appropriate place to start, just to give us a little bit of context. So you can start wherever you feel is right.
So I'll give you a little background. I was raised in the church. My dad is a retired minister. And but even after he retired, we were always at church. Sunday morning, Sunday night, Wednesday night. We were involved in everything. So I just grew up always being at church. Like that's just what you did. You went to church unless you were deathly ill,
Right.
So that was just my life. So that was just a constant for me. Growing up, it was only natural that I continued going to church. And I met my first husband, Brian, through his mom, actually. We worked together at another bank, and she gave me that, "You'd be perfect for my son." And I was like, oh, here we go.
Right.
Like that's the kiss of death, But eventually we met, and he was going to Kentucky Christian College to be a minister. So our morals aligned, and we both were goofy and like to laugh and just hit it off. So I got married in 2001, and I had my daughter Abby in 2005. And then I had my son Jack in 2008. And shortly after that, Brian started having some back issues. And he ended up at the hospital in a lot of pain. And come to find out, he had a degenerative disc and had to have back surgery, had to have a disc fusion. And so that happened in the fall of 2008. So it was tough. It was hard because he pretty much couldn't do anything. He had the surgery, he was down. So I kind of was already being, in charge of the house, inside and out, and taking care of a baby and a toddler. So he couldn't go back to work. So all of that was kind of a struggle. So I was already having to lean on God quite a bit. And he was going to the doctor, off and on, and I would be going to work, and my mother-in-law would watch the kids, and my father-in-law would come and take him to the doctor. So we kind of had a system going. So it was February 6th of 2009, and I was at work, and he had a doctor's appointment that day. And my father-in-law was going to pick him up, and he called me. I'm at work, and it was around 2:00, I guess, about the time he was going to pick him up, and said, "Hey, he's not answering the door." And I said, "Oh, he probably overslept," because he was never sleeping well. and always struggled, with pain. He'd be up during the night. So this was not unusual, but the door was locked and he couldn't get in. So I was like, okay, I'll run home real quick, open the door. Again, I'm sure, he's just asleep. So I got home, and, as I was driving home, it runs through your mind, like, what if something's wrong?
Right.
But then you think, no, I'm sure it's fine,
Right.
So I got home, my father-in-law was parked on the street. And as I was pulling in the driveway, I just kind of had that panicked feeling,
Yeah.
So I kind of ran up to the door. I didn't even wait for him. I unlocked the door, ran inside, I'm calling his name, and I go in the bedroom. And as soon as I saw him, I knew he was gone. I mean, he was laying there, and it was very obvious he passed away in his sleep, but he was cold. I touched his arm, and I just knew right away he was gone. And I just kind of remember screaming no over and over. And by this time, my father-in-law is coming in, and it's kind of like that. You kind of feel like you're outside of yourself for a minute, like you're kind of watching what's going on, but you're going through it. And I remember feeling panicked at him seeing his son. And so I'm kind of trying to get out of the room to meet him, but at the same time, he's hearing me screaming. He's coming in, and, in my head, I'm thinking, okay, I got to call 911. He was trying to do CPR on him, but I mean, I knew he was gone. Like, you could just tell. And it was like, it was surreal. I mean, in that moment, you're just so many emotions, so many things happening. And it's just, that realization that he's gone, but how can this be? But just,
Right.
so many emotions. And I remember the police finally getting there, and I couldn't even tell you where my father-in-law was at the time. Like, I don't even remember really, but I remember the policeman saying, "Can I call someone for you?" And the first thing that came to my mind was my dad. So I know they called him at work, and my dad came right away. And then I'm like, my boss, because I was supposed to go back to work.
Yeah.
So I was able to give him that information. And I just remember my dad showing up and just sitting down with me and just crying with me. I mean, and I was just kept saying, what am I going to do? Just over and over, like, how am I going to do this? And it was just, like I said, it was just so surreal in that moment. And then, thinking about my mother-in-law and having to tell her, and just so many things. My family came to the house that day, and I'm very realistic. And I kind of remember the cop pulling me aside, and because he was so young, he was only 30. We were both 30 at the time.
Wow.
And having to ask me questions. And I got it. Like, I understood that, okay, it obviously looks like natural causes, but they have to be sure. He has to ask me questions. And he was being very careful with me. And I remember, just because I'm kind of blunt, but I remember just saying, look, I know that you're worried about me panicking. I'm okay right now. So go ahead and ask me what you need to ask me. Like, I was just like putting it out there.
Now's your time.
Yeah. So, but it was just, and I think it's all after everything dies down that is the worst. It's the nighttime. It's once people stop calling, and checking on you, and, life moves on for everyone else, but you're still there, you're still in it. And it's just, it's hard, especially being young and having a baby. And I mean, don't get me wrong, my family is and was so supportive, but it's just not the same, when your spouse is gone, like, and you're just left there.
Right.
But it was, immediately I knew I was not going to blame God. Like, I knew right away that was not going to be where I went. And if anything, and this kind of became controversial, I, in a sense, was relieved for Brian, only because I knew how much pain he was in. I knew how much he was suffering. He was depressed, just so many things that I couldn't help him with.
Mm-hmm.
And in a sense, I kind of felt like, I'd been praying to God to, hey, take his pain away, make him better. Well, he did,
Yeah,
like,
true.
Not in the way that I intended, but he did. And for that, I was, in a sense, happy for him, because I knew where he was. I knew he was a believer. I knew he was a Christ follower. And so that gave me relief. For his family, not so much. They struggled, and that was kind of bone of contention for a while. But again, like, and I understood that our grief was different. We were handling things differently, but I saw a lot of things that they didn't see. And I think that allowed me to have that feeling of relief for him.
Yeah.
You know, it sucked for the rest of us, but I knew that God was in control. I trusted that I was going to get through it, even though, I mean, it was dark. It was dark at first. And there were many a night that I would sit there and just cry, and I've got my 3-year-old daughter asking where daddy is.
Oh,
and, even though you've already explained, daddy went to heaven, daddy's not coming back. And, here she is still asking every few days,
Gosh.
Yeah. And it is, it was hard, but at the time there was a song out by Casting Crowns called Praise You in the Storm.
Mm-hmm.
I'd heard that song several times before, and I knew immediately I wanted that sung at his funeral, because I wanted to send a message that even though, man, this stinks and I have no idea where my life is going right now, I am still going to praise God. And that was the message that I wanted to send.
Yeah.
That's
so good. So that was your song for that
It
time.
was. Mm-hmm. It really was. And the funny thing is, I kind of felt like God used that a few different times in my life for different reasons. But I had my cousins sing, and so I had them sing it at his funeral. Mm-hmm. And it just meant a lot to me, because it was important that I send that message that, hey, I don't have all the answers. I'm certainly devastated, but, I'm not going to blame God. I'm still going to praise him and understand that there's a reason for all of this. And I'm going to trust. I'm going to trust that he's still here. He hasn't left me. He hasn't forsaken me, just like he promised,
Yeah. So as a mother, a young mother, 30-year-old with 3 kids. So first, I'm glad to hear that you were praising God through that storm, because that's amazing. And most people, it takes them a while to get to that point. What were some things that you did during that time to really help yourself cope and to be that strong foundation for your children?
It was really them. They were what got me through. They were what got me out of bed each day. I knew I couldn't just wallow in self-pity and grief, because they needed me. I had an infant that I had to make bottles for and change diapers, and I had a toddler, and I had to keep going. And it was hard. I'm not going to pretend that, I walked around all day praising God, because that really wasn't how it was. And I'll be honest, like, for a while there, I'd have a drink at night before bed, and I couldn't sleep. And plus I had never been alone. I'd never lived alone before. So that was an adjustment too.
Yeah.
All of a sudden I'm like the man and woman of the house. And there were a lot of adjustments. And I even went through a period of, I remember driving down the road and kind of not caring. Like on the one hand, I was very present and very determined to be there for my kids. But on the other hand, I kind of had this fearlessness, like, something happened to me. Oh, well, you know what I mean? Yeah. It was kind of a fine line. And not that I would ever choose to desert my kids. It was just that feeling of, well, if something happens to me, I know where I'm going and we'll be together.
Yeah.
And, it'll be fine. But it really, I had to rely on family a lot. My best friend came down from Columbus. She stayed a week with me, and it helped having people there, like just having company.
Yeah.
I'd go over to my parents a lot, listening to Christian music in the car. And it wasn't, I can't say that I listened to it all the time. There were times I just wasn't in the mood, and I turned it off. But I always came back to my faith.
Yeah.
And that's what I clung to. I mean, as if I was hanging off the side of a cliff and I was holding on for dear life. That is how I clung to my faith. I mean, it was so crucial. And I can't imagine how other people get through things like that without faith. I mean, I really can't, because I feel like I still would have gotten through, but not nearly as unscathed as I did.
Yeah.
you know, I can't say enough how much God was there. I mean, and he showed me. I mean, he showed me he was there in little things my kids would do, or a just smile.
Mm.
Jack was only 7 months old, and just a little smile he would give me, or God showed me he was there. He had not forgotten me.
Yeah. Oh, that's
Yeah.
beautiful. And what would you say to someone that does not have faith, that might be going through this right now, that doesn't even know what they're missing?
I would say call me. I'd be happy to talk to you, but reach out. God's always listening. There's not, there are like formatted prayers, but God doesn't require that for us to reach out. He's always there waiting. And like I said, I couldn't imagine going through this without him. I think it's great to have family and friends that are supportive, but it's not the same. It's not the same as having a loving, sympathetic God, that mourns with us and grieves with us, and reaching out to him. I mean, and there were nights going to bed crying and feeling that grief, but knowing he's there, and just, reach out, open your Bible. There are many times I didn't know what I was looking for. I literally would just open my Bible and put my finger down and read whatever I came to, and it was just that I was searching. I was searching for encouragement, and I was searching for comfort, and I would find it. I mean, God promises that if we reach out to him, he will be there. He's not the one who leaves us.
Yeah.
And I would encourage anyone to, to talk to someone. Like I said, reach out to me. I want to be an open book for anyone that I can help. And like I said, it wasn't all roses and happy prayers. And, there were dark times. I think that sometimes though, you have to go through those to really appreciate who God is and what he does for us. There's no question about that in my mind.
Well said. And for those that are maybe do have faith, but are feeling kind of isolated or lost and don't know what to do right now, that are going through grief or loss, what would you recommend for them to do?
I would say first off, you're not alone. It's really hard when you're in the moment and you have that feeling that, people mean well. They want to encourage you, but they don't always know what to say. And a lot of times there's really nothing they can say. As much as I think people want to sympathize and empathize, they don't know what you're going through. And honestly, every grief situation is different anyway. But, I would just say, pray, talk to God, open up your heart, give him everything, because he already knows it anyway. I don't think God gets mad at us when we cry out in distress and we cry out in grief. And I think that's okay. And I think a lot of people think, oh, I'm doing something bad if I tell God how I really feel. Well, guess what? He already knows how you really feel.
Right, true.
But I would just say, allow yourself to feel that pain as hard as it is. That's the only way to get through it. It really is. And reach out to someone who's been there, who understands that, after the funeral's over and the meals stop coming and the cards stop showing up in the mail, you're still left in your pit. And reach out to someone who's been there, or, hopefully you have a friend who you're close enough to that you can say, hey, I'm having a really bad day. Can you just sit with me? Or can we just go grab coffee? Or, whatever it may be, because that is so, so important.
So you mentioned, and I totally agree, that sometimes people just don't really know how to help. But how can a friend of yours or a family member truly be there to help you in a time of loss when you're going through such grief?
I think hopefully you would have the kind of relationship that a family member could say, what can I do to help you? And hopefully you could say, you know what, I just want to be left alone, or just sit with me. I think it really depends on the person. I know for me, it helped to have company, distraction. And sometimes, to be honest, there was some unhealthy distraction because I was just looking for anything to take my mind off of it. But other times it was, friends coming over and watching a movie with me. And because I had the kids, it's not like I could just, go out whenever I
Right.
wanted to. But I mean, my parents did help with that too. They would babysit and I'd go out with friends or whatever. But, I think it's important to be sensitive to whatever that person wants. And sometimes it is to be left alone. And I think it's important not to get offended. I know that I was I still am really. I don't cry in front of a lot of people. And I've always been like that. And I know that was hard for Brian's family because I think they kind of felt like at times I wasn't showing emotion.
Yeah.
But it was just that I wasn't showing them emotion. I was kind of privately grieving. And that was just how I did it. And I think it helped to have people respect that and just know that, however you need to get through this, as long as it's in a healthy way, just allow that person to do that. And just to kind of, like I said, be there for them, whatever their needs may be. And, everybody's different. And like I said, if it's to, hey, let's watch a comedy and laugh, or, I just need to be by myself right now, just respect that and understand that that's what they need. It's not about you. It's about them and trying to grieve and get through this.
So as a friend or family member, put it out there to you, but and saying to anybody going through this,
Right.
If they don't want to, don't push it.
Right. Yeah. Just respect the answer,
Okay.
whatever it may be, and understand that, if you're going to ask, then be prepared to listen, and respect their decision, whatever that may be.
Right. That's good. And I know you said doing like people brought meals and stuff like that. That's a good way too, right? To just
And
drop
that
off a
helped. That
meal.
was absolutely. And especially with, like I said, being a single mom, actually he passed away 5 days before my birthday.
Oh
And
gosh.
I just, that year I was like, I'm not celebrating. I mean, I just
Yeah.
refused. I wouldn't let anyone take me out to dinner, and some people kind of pushed a little bit. And I was like, you know what, this is what I want. I just don't want to, and it kind of helped. I mean, people still kind of sent cards or flowers or whatever. And that was fine. But just again, respecting the person's viewpoint, respecting what they need. And I think too, even a month or two after the funeral, send a card, just saying, or a text, just saying, hey, I'm just thinking about you. Is there anything you need, or you want to meet for coffee? I mean, just something to let people know that you're still thinking of them. Like I said, I think one of the hardest realizations was after the funeral, everyone else goes on with their life. And I'm still here. My grief didn't change just because the funeral's over.
Right.
So I think just people being aware of that and still kind of saying, hey, I haven't forgotten about you. I'm still here if you need to talk or whatever.
Okay. That's good. That's great advice. Because I
Yeah.
know a lot of times people just don't really know what to say or do. So that's really
Right.
helpful.
Yeah.
Now, how about for the person grieving? Because I know you get a lot of people that say, call me if you need anything. At what point do you get to where you're like, okay, I'm actually going to ask for help with these things, or I'm going to take someone up on that offer? Or do you get to that point?
I think it just depends on the person. I know for me, I'm very independent. And I mean, I went through many years, not just right after my husband died, but just in general, where I should have asked for help and I just didn't. I was just determined to do it. Now, I would kind of reach out to my older brothers and, hey, like, my washer's making a funny sound, can you help me with it or something like that.
Yeah.
But when it came to needing some kind of emotional support, I was really lacking in, being humble enough to ask. And that was kind of a learning lesson for me, and honestly still is. You can't have your cake and eat it too. And being a follower of Christ, humility is a big thing. And that's something that I struggle with, humbling myself to put myself out there and admit I need help with something. And so hopefully, the people who are watching that are going through this would be able to, and be strong enough, because really that's what it boils down to. Being able to say I need help, that's a strength. And I think that it's just about the person, and if they're able to reach out. Like I said, there were times I should have and I didn't, but that was a learning lesson for me. So
what would you say you learned about yourself going through what you went through?
I definitely learned that I was stronger than I thought I was. Like I said, I hadn't even lived alone. So it was a rude awakening. But when all of a sudden I'm living alone, I'm taking care of a house by myself, I'm a single parent, I'm mowing the yard, I'm cooking the dinners, all of a sudden I have to do it
Yeah.
all. And, there were days I just cried, and just kind of had a little pity party. And then I would pick myself back up and go out and mow the grass or whatever needed to be done. But I definitely learned that I was a lot stronger than I knew. And, I could kind of see that, I don't believe that God puts us through tough times, but I think He allows us to go through tough times. And I think it's about looking for that silver lining, that, hey, this was tough, but what good came out of it? And I did. I learned that I was stronger. I learned that I could handle a lot more than I ever thought I could. And I'm appreciative for that. Yeah, because that really helped me going forward to know that I could handle things
Yeah.
and not be afraid.
Right. And what would you say that you learn about how God sees you, or just your relationship with God through all of that?
I think you kind of said it. Like, God sees me. He sees all of us, and I think sometimes it's so hard to get lost in the billions of people in this world, and you forget that God created you. Everything about you. And I think that when you're going through something like that, it's very easy to go, you're not there for me. How could you let this happen? And I had moments of that, but I always came back to my faith and being grounded in that. And I do think that was my upbringing, because I don't know that I would have been able to really grab onto that, but I just
That's
trusted.
good.
And I knew that, all right, God, there's a reason for this, and I'm just going to have to hold on. And some days it was by a thread, it
Yeah.
really was. Other days it was a bit easier, but I just had to hold on and trust that He sees me. He knows me. He already sees where I'm going to be. And, I'm just going to ride along and trust that, His plan is going to be the best plan. I did. I've gone through a lot since then, and He's always been there. And sometimes I shifted off track, and He kind of had to yank me back on, but I believe He was always there, and I believe He uses certain situations to show us that. We just have to believe in it and look for it and know that He's got us in His hands.
Right. Well, I'm thankful for the foundation that you had, being brought up in the church and knowing God and just having that, and for your faith during that time. So I'm glad that you had that, and just that it strengthened your relationship with God, and He was able to show you, you got this, sister. Like, you can do it all with Him, of course, but you can do this.
Absolutely. Yeah.
And what would you say? So I know you said that you were able to be like, to pick yourself up. Like, you could stay in it for a minute, but you can pick yourself back up and be like, okay, we got to get the grass cut. I got to take care of the kids. What would you say to someone that might be stuck in, kind of a depression or just, I can't do it phase right now, where they haven't yet picked themselves back up yet?
I would say to, allow yourself to have a moment. Allow yourself that moment to grieve, to cry, but don't stay in it. It's not healthy for you. It's not healthy for kids if you have kids. Just try to go do something that makes you happy. And that was kind of what I had to grasp. I had to just not allow myself to sit for too long. There were times I just, it was going to happen. I was going to sit and cry and, eat a pint of ice cream and, but there, at the end of the day, it boiled down to my kids. Really, I can't imagine how I would have gotten through it without them, because I think that, it was my son, needing me to feed him, and my daughter wanting me to watch her dance. And, just those little things that you take for granted, but in that moment, you just got to pull yourself back up and go, okay, I've got to be a mom. I'm a mom first. I can wallow later.
Yeah.
So
that's great advice. And it's okay to sit, like you said, to have your moment, because I feel like sometimes it's the opposite where people don't give themselves that opportunity
right.
either.
Right.
So
And I
that's
don't think
good.
anybody should be made to feel guilty for that, that
Yeah.
I know some people go, you just got to get over it. Well, no, you don't. I mean, that's not how life works.
Right.
And truth be told, you're never going to get over it. You will just learn how to cope better. And
Mm-hmm.
that's what it boils down to. I still, to this day, the anniversary of his death, I'm always a little bit down that day and just
Yeah.
memories. But it's gotten better every year. I've obviously moved on with my life, and I know that's what he would want me to do anyway. But I've never forgotten him. I see him every day in my kids. My son looks like him, and my daughter has his goofiness. She'll do things, and I'm like, man,
No,
that's your dad, and I love it. I wouldn't have it any other way. And I think it's
that's sweet.
just knowing it will get better.
Yeah.
It will. It's going to take time, but it will get better.
I love that. And anything that you want to leave, I feel like you've given so much hope and insight already, but anything else that you want to say to anyone that might be watching or listening or that has a loved one that's going through this right now?
I think to those that are going through it, just don't give up. I promise it will get better. It may take time, and that's okay. You should be allowed to grieve. That's what we have to do to work through everything. And that's okay. And I would encourage people to reach out to me. I'm happy to listen or talk or offer advice. And for those that have a loved one, just be patient and love them. I mean, really, that's all you can do. I know it's hard when you kind of think in your head sometimes, well, why aren't you better now? There's no time limit. There's no rule book for grief. And I think whether you've lost a spouse or a parent or a child or a friend or whatever it may be, everybody has their own way of dealing with it. And I think it's just important to just love them. Just love them. I mean, at the end of the day, that's what
That's
you
so
need to
good.
do.
Yeah, that's great. Well, thank you again for sharing your story. Now
Thank you.
you mentioned that they could get in touch with you. What would be the best way to
Yes.
do that?
Email
Okay.
works. It's Sara, Sarad, like dog, Vogel, V as in Victor, Ogel, @gmail.com.
Perfect. That's
Yeah,
wonderful. Well, thank you for offering that. That's huge.
absolutely.
And then you can always comment below as well with anything, and I'll make sure Sarah gets those but any comments or questions that you have for her. But Sarah, I appreciate you doing this. I just know that God's going to use this in a big way because there's just not a lot of help out there that I know of
Yeah,
anyway for people and for
right.
people that are watching a friend or a loved one go through this, just
Yeah,
knowing how to really be there. So I appreciate your
right.
insight and sharing hope.
Absolutely.
Yeah, just thankful that God really used that situation to grow you.
Yeah,
And
absolutely. Thank you for having me. I appreciate it.
absolutely. And I look forward to having you back. So I'm not even going
I
to
will
ask
come
if you
back.
will because we've already talked about it. Sarah's got some
Yep,
amazing stories. So thank
I've
you.
got more to share.
Yes, well, I can't wait. But thank you again
Yeah.
for being on. And for everyone watching or listening, we will have another podcast release on Thursday at 9 a.m. But Sarah, thank you.
Thank you.
All right, have a blessed day.
You too.
Thank you for joining us today for the Shared Cup podcast. Don't forget to subscribe and remember that each one of us has a story that shows the overflowing love of God. If you want to be a guest on our podcast, put a comment below and we'll send you the link to apply. Have a blessed day and thank you so much for joining us.